Hi y'all, this is Tanya from Solopreneur Diaries. Today we are talking about looping on BoardBooster. This is the second in a series of videos that I'm doing about BoardBooster. The first video is an overview, so if you haven't watched it yet, you may want to start there. What is looping? Well, looping is the secret sauce of BoardBooster. It's what sets BoardBooster apart from the other Pinterest schedulers, and it really lets you level up your Pinterest game. Looping takes a pin and repins it to the same board automatically. In other words, you pin it one time and it keeps getting repinned based on the schedule that you set. The advantage of looping is that it refreshes all the older content that you've added to your account over the years. Instead of sitting at the bottom of a Pinterest board, these pins are now shared with your current audience, which gives them new exposure. Looping is also a set it and forget it strategy. With looping, you can be active on Pinterest without actually having to be on Pinterest all day, every day. I'm now pinning 2,000 pins a month, and almost a third of those are pinned through looping. So let's walk through how to set up looping. We're going to start on the BoardBooster homepage, click on Pinning Tools, and then click on Looping. And this pulls up a list of all the boards that I have looping set up for. So to add a new board, click on Add Boards. If one of your boards that you want to loop doesn't show up here, then just click on Refresh Boards, and that will pull any new boards in that you may have created. So if I wanted to loop my Solopreneur Diaries blog board, I would click the check mark and then click Continue. I'm going to skip that today, and we're just going to look at a board that I already have set up. So this is my Building a Business board. And starting at the top with the settings, the first is status. So it shows me that it's working. That means that it's actually pinning off of this board. So it's looping pins for me. Frequency, you can choose multiple pins per day, or you can choose one or fewer pins per day. I have it set up to pin multiple pins per day. Time settings, you can choose basic or advanced. If you choose advanced, then you have some options to choose different pinning windows or to choose a different schedule for Saturdays or Sundays compared to weekdays. I just use a basic schedule because I think it's simpler. You can choose how many pins you want to loop per day. I have this board set up to pin 4 pins per day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. because that's when my audience tends to be online. You can also choose the days of the week that you want to pin. So if you wanted to skip some days, you would just uncheck those marks. Like if I didn't want to pin on Wednesdays, I could uncheck Wednesday. But I pin Monday through Sunday on this board. Pin selection method, you have 3 choices: chronological, oldest to newest, chronological, newest to oldest, and random. Chronological oldest to newest makes the most sense for looping because this is going to take the oldest pin, the one that's at the very bottom of your board, and that's the one that's going to repin. So it's going to constantly refresh that older content. For the size of the pins, you can choose all, tall only, tall or square. I just always leave this on all. And then automatic deduplication is something I wanted to talk a little bit about. And I'm going to click on this question mark because that gives you an explanation of what automatic deduplication means. And you can click on any of those question marks to get that expanded information. So automatic deduplication, when you repin to the same board, you end up with 2 copies of the same pin on that board. BoardBooster will go back after a certain number of days and it will look at both pins, the old pin and the new pin, and delete the one that has the fewest number of repins. So that keeps your board from filling up with a lot of duplicate pins. So this is something that I have enabled. And then in the next line, you choose how often you want to run deduplication. So I have it set at 25 days, and I choose 25 because sometimes it takes a while for a pin to really take off, and I don't want it to be automatically deleted before it has a chance to, sort of gain some traction. I know people who have that number set at 7 days, and I know other people who have it set at 30 days. So you can just choose any time frame that you want to run deduplication. And then another option that you have is to protect viral duplicates. And there's a couple of different things you can look at here. One is to keep duplicate pins that have a certain number of repins. So when BoardBooster does that look back to see how many repins your new pin and old pin have, you can tell it to keep both if it has a certain number of repins. I have that set on 10. I know people who have it set at 50. I know other people who have it set at 5. So you decide what viral means to you, and that's the number that you set that you want to keep both pins without deleting either one. The last option is protection for pins with comments. I have this disabled because I don't get a lot of comments on pins, and so it doesn't matter to me if I keep a pin just because it has comments. If you wanted to enable that, then you would have the option to set the number of comments that you wanted to keep both pins, the old pin and the new pin. But again, I just have that disabled. So you make all your selections and then you click on save, and that's it. That's all you have to do to set up a board to loop. It's that easy. I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about some strategic things that you want to think about with looping. First of all is which boards should you loop? Well, you can't loop group boards, so keep that in mind. You can only loop pins on boards that you own. And you really should only loop boards that are relevant to your brand. So, for example, I have some lifestyle boards like, crafts and cooking and that kind of thing. I don't blog about crafts or cooking, so I would not loop those boards. I would loop boards like blogging tips, building a business, productivity and planning. Those are the kinds of things that I blog about, so those are also the boards that I would want to loop because I want that content to be refreshed. It's also better to only loop larger boards that have a lot of pins. I don't loop any board that has fewer than 50 pins. And then the larger the board and the more important it is to my brand, the more pins per day that I would loop. So for example, my blogging tips board is a fairly large board. It's critical to my brand, so I loop more pins from that board. I have some smaller niche boards like goals and habits. That is a topic that I blog about, but I don't have a lot of pins on that board, so I loop fewer pins per day off of those smaller niche boards. And how many pins should you loop overall? Some people have their accounts set up so that almost all of their daily pinning comes from looping. I don't do that because I also want to pin fresh content. I try to keep the number of scheduled pins and the number of looped pins about even. So I'm currently pinning about 30 pins a day from scheduling and about 30 pins a day from looping, and then the rest of my daily pins go to my group boards. So that's how you set up looping on BoardBooster. Again, looping allows you to be really active and consistent in your pinning. That's going to grow your Pinterest account and ultimately send more traffic to your website. And that's what we want, right? This is Tanya from Solopreneur Diaries. Happy pinning!